Secretary of the branch of Sasco from the University of the Free State. The university has been surrounded by racist activities there. She's the one who's going to be telling us and giving us maybe a bit of background and what is really happening, because they were also supposed to be having a march today, and she will be giving us all the details. Z, welcome to Central News.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you for having
me. I'm sorry for that. Zethu, you know, your name is a bit difficult, but I'll try to adjust as we go. Can you give us a bit of background on activities that has been happening in the university?
Yes. The university has had a lot of racism around it. It's been years that's been happening, but the past few weeks, there was a lecture that Dr. Pedro Mzileni had given to students in an African customary law class. So the AfriForum lodged a complaint saying that the class was racist, and Dr. Pedro had racist remarks. Apparently, there was even videos that were taken of him in this lecture without his knowledge. And then 2 weeks back, a student as well, a Black student, was called a baboon by a white student. When the student went to report this to the lecturer said it was a joke, and it was then dismissed as a joke. But the student refused to let it become a joke. So there's been a lot of back and forth within the student body and the university on how to handle the matter, and also how they handle the matter of Dr. Pedro Mzileni. There's also been marches by the students. Sasco has also been part of the marches with regards to these racist claims.
Yes, you were also supposed to be having a march today. What transpired? What happened? Or the march has been postponed? What happened?
There was a march today, yes. Then management of the UFS addressed the students that were part of the march, but they did not give us what we wanted from the demands that we had sent, because we had sent multiple demands. We'd even sent letters to HR in the university, but they didn't give us the response that we wanted. So we said we're giving them 12 hours to respond to the demands. So the march is therefore postponed for 12 hours.
Specifically coming to Sasco, what are actions that you have taken trying to combat this racism?
The branch of Sasco at UFS, we wrote a letter to HR expressing this thing of racism, expressing that we are against it, and we would like the university to take steps that will protect the victim. We also had the march. The march was a Sasco march, that why we want to address this, so that the student body as well, even the students that haven't reported the racism that they've experienced, so that they can report it as well, and this can be dealt accordingly. We've also asked for the investigation of the lecturer and also the suspension of the student and the lecturer who enabled this behavior.
You spoke about Dr. Mzileni. Can you give us a bit of background on his case, and what has truly happened there?
With Dr. Mzileni's case, after the lecture that Dr. Mzileni gave in the African Customary Law class on the 25th of July, there was a complaint by AfriForum Youth that Dr. Mzileni has been racist and has said racist remarks in the students. Then complained that there was no racist that they saw. Most of them say they didn't see any racism. There was even there's even a petition signed by lecturers all over the country about this incident of Dr. Mzileni. Also, with the incident of Dr. Mzileni, unlike the student and the lecturer who were racist to another student, his case was investigated right then because it was lodged by AfriForum, the complaint. But with the student that laid a complaint with a lecturer and the student who called them a baboon, they haven't done a proper investigation since then. So now the problem is, we'd like to know if the UFS is then an institution of higher learning, or is it the home of AfriForum?
Yes. As the student organization, from the beginning, did you try to engage with the university to say, we are aware that you are handling different cases, not the same, or did you just maybe wait for a while and now this is the time that you are saying, let us try to handle it?
We did, right, especially after the case of Dr. Mzileni. Some of us in the organization were even called for interviews to speak about, because the organization had a lecture as well, a political lecture, where we invited Dr. Petro Mzileni. And before that lecture, we had received communication that we should cancel that lecture, but we didn't. We continued with the lecture and Dr. Mzileni addressed us. Shortly after that lecture, we received some members of the organization and some students of Socialist Forum were called as well to have interviews on the lecture and if they thought the lecture was racist. So we have taken steps and we've written even statements that say we are against the university.
Yes, let us go back to the role of Professor Jansen. I know that back in the years when he was appointed, there were those people who were saying, yes, he will be able maybe to deal with such issues. Can you maybe try to tell us that he's been maybe helpful towards the student, or maybe what role is he playing?
He hasn't been very helpful to the student, because what they did was they interfered with the student. Instead of them, in fact, lodging a proper investigation, they tried interfering and mediating between the two students, even without the lecturer. And they even lied about the name of the victim, the perpetrator, who called the other student a baboon. So they haven't been helpful with anything.
So where is the case now of the student being called the baboon? Have the charges been dropped?
The university currently says they have an external body who's investigating this case, but they refuse to now tell us who the external body is, because it's very worrying that they will not want to tell of any external bodies, but they've been interfering with the investigation from within. So our biggest fear is that they're going to interfere with this external body if they're not willing to disclose it.
Okay. Can you give maybe somebody who's listening right now the difference between the cases, and why do you think that whites are being given preference than Black people in the university?
Okay, thank you. With Dr. Mzileni's case, Dr. Mzileni, instead of him being protected as a lecturer of the university, because what he teaches is what the university expects him to teach, because he teaches about decolonization. So them calling decolonization racist is an issue. And with the student who was called a baboon, the university waited until momentum was gained and students started protesting before they actually lodged an investigation.
Okay. Unity is needed now more than ever. As Sasco, how are you going to make sure that you unite students despite of your political affiliation?
Today was actually, in fact, not even today, the picket last week was a start of uniting students, because we had come together as all student organizations and picketed for the student who was called the baboon, and subsequently the issue of Dr. Mzileni. Even today, all student organizations and the SRC was present in the picket. There was even students there to assist in the picket and the protest.
In relation to both cases, what do you want to see happening or going forward?
The first one would actually to call for the case against Dr. Mzileni to be withdrawn. And then secondly, with the case of the student who was called a baboon, we would like to see the suspension of the student and the lecturer until the end of the investigation. We'd also like to see that the lecturer is investigated not only for the racist remark that she enabled to happen in her class, but also with the fact that she continued with classes. These students even missed 3 tests. They were not even given a chance to write alternative tests. Also, the lecturer continued to now lecture in Afrikaans instead of lecturing in English, whereas the students are in an English class. So it would be nice for the lecturer to be investigated, and even the marks of the students, so that now students are not docked marks because of coming out and speaking of the experiences that they've been having in this class.
Can you give us your last remarks?
My last remarks are that the University of the Free State should not only investigate these things, but they should decide if the Vision 130 of being diverse and looking after all students' need is actually a vision for all students or a vision for white people. Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.